So if you're watching this video, I assume you need to stretch your calf muscles, but you might not know exactly what to do. So I'm going to show you 5 different ways you can stretch out your calf muscles, and including the pros and cons of each of them. So listen up. And also, before we get going, I highly recommend you guys subscribe to Ryleyrehab, because I'm going to be coming up with new videos every single week to help you become the expert of your own body. And with that being said, we need to explain how to stretch the calf so you can be the expert of your own calf. And what I'm going to show you guys is 5 different stretches, starting with the easiest to the hardest. And it all depends on where you're at and what your goals are. So just so you guys understand, when I talk about calf stretching, I'm talking about basically the muscles on the back of your leg. These muscles all make your foot go down in this direction. And the general idea is by stretching them, you want to pull your foot up. So that's the basic part of it. I think most people watching this have that idea. But just to go deeper into detail, I'm going to show you guys 5 different ways you can stretch it. And the first way, the simplest way, is by you sitting right here, keeping your knees slightly bent, holding on the back of your foot and pulling it up like that. That's the most basic, probably the easiest, simplest stretch you can do for your calf. The other thing too that you can do is you can rest your knee, get a pillow, roll it up, rest it on your knee, and pull on your leg. And alternatively, you can reach for a belt here. I apologize for the color, I'll turn it this way so you can see. And you pull your leg back like this. In general, you want to hold this for about 30 seconds to a minute. And the big advantage with this one is, number one, because your knee is bent, you're actually stretching a lot more at the ankle joint. I know some people will say you stretch certain calf muscles more than others when your knee's bent. Might be true, but from my experience, I find this is more actually getting the joint itself and the capsule there looser. So this is really good if you, especially if you sprained your ankle and you need to just improve the motion at the joint and you're not as concerned about working on the calf muscle itself. This one's also really good if you have a very sore ankle, and if you tried to stand on it and then I'll show these other stretches later, but if you tried to stand on it and jam your knee forward, it might be a little too high pressure on the ankle. So by doing this, you can really control how much pressure you put on it. And in general, I assume if you're doing this one, you're probably not going to be putting much pressure on, because it's better to do the high pressure ones in standing. The one disadvantage of this is obviously you're not going to get the same amount of pressure, but I think this is okay for most people doing it. The second one you can do is you can take this pillow away and instead have a straight leg. And if you're pretty bendy to begin with, you can reach with your hand. But I would recommend for anybody, especially if you have some kind of back pain or anything that would stop it, or if you're just not bendy enough, exact same thing, grab onto a belt and hold on, keep it against the balls of your feet right here, and then pull it back. This one, when you keep your knee straight and you don't let the knee bend, you're actually getting, it's called the gastrocnemius, but it's basically the calf muscle that runs all the way from up here down to your feet. And this one it's really important to keep this one flexible, because this is one thing that can get tight on people, especially if you don't stretch it. I find this one is a great one to do, and the advantages are similar to the first one, plus the fact that you're stretching that muscle that goes all the way back there. If you're doing this right, you should feel this in the back of the knee as you do this as well. Now the third way to stretch is when you start to get onto your feet, and this is one that once again will work on the joint itself. And all you do here is you basically just squat down, and that's all there is to it. You just squat down as far as you comfortably can. Ideally, your heels should stay planted on the ground. I'm going to show you on this leg so you can see. And you're trying to make sure your knee goes as far forward as possible. You want to make sure it goes right over top of the toes so it isn't going out to the side on either direction. But the big idea with this is you're putting a lot of your own body weight on. So this is really good, especially if it's later into an injury and you need to get that range of motion back. You realize you're not hurting anything, it's not causing too much pain. But with this, you can really get the pressure of your body weight, and even more, you can push in onto your knee to get a little more of a stretch. I would say be careful with this one if it is really sore, but this is a really good one. And once again, this one can work if you're feeling you need to loosen up things in the ankle joint itself and you're not as worried about getting the muscle directly. One other thing too, I made a video before explaining the difference of stretching for pains versus stretching for gains. And I find that's a really good one to kind of illustrate why when you're trying to deal with getting rid of your pain, for example, pain in your calf from an Achilles tendon injury, versus trying to gain your flexibility if you were a gymnast or if for some reason you needed more flexibility in order to prevent yourself from injury in the future. So check out that video, but just remember that this is more on the side of stretching for gains. This is more if you really need to push that thing through and you're not as worried about flaring it up, you're not as worried about causing pain. Now for the fourth stretch, what you're gonna do is you're gonna stand with one leg in front and one leg in the back. I lowered the camera down so you can see, but I would be stretching the back leg right here, this one. And what I wanna do here is I wanna keep that heel flat on the ground, keeping my knees straight. I'm gonna roll this up and turn here a bit so you can see. I wanna keep my knees straight right here. And then from that point, what you wanna do is you wanna step forward if you need to, but in general, you're bringing that leg forward in this direction here as far as you comfortably can. I happen to be pretty flexible in this, but if you're stopping at this point, don't push this past the point where your heel starts to roll off. On the squat one, I made an exception on that, but this one, you really can control how far it goes. If it feels like it's rolling off, just push to that point and no further. Once again, the advantage of this one is it will stretch more aggressively, and it also will stretch that gastrocnemius muscle, basically the calf muscle, much more, assuming that you keep that knee as straight as you possibly can. One other advantage to this is this won't strain as much on the feet. If you have something like plantar fasciitis and it's really easily irritated by you coming off onto your toes, you can instead keep the pressure here, and it'll be a much better way to stretch the calves if you're easily irritated by, if your pain is easily set off with plantar fasciitis. The last variation I'm going to show, I think you only need my legs and my sweet lower body to look at. But the last one you're going to do is actually focusing more on the toes, and all you need is a wall nearby. I'm going to demonstrate on the couch, and I'm going to use my foot here. What you want to do here is you want to keep a straight knee, just like the other ones, heel on the ground, and you push your toes against a wall. And then all you do from that point is you just, keeping a straight leg, drive your body up. From up here, it would look like this. You drive your body up, and as you do that, you'll feel a stretch all the way in the calves. This one is really good because it goes all the way to the toes. If you imagine your toes are here, if those things are getting bent back, if they're getting bent back there, you're gonna feel some stretches in the deeper muscles of your feet, or the deeper muscles of your calf, actually. So this is a really good one to get all the way down to the toes. Probably if you're going for the most aggressive stretch to give you the most bang for your buck, getting the entire leg stretched out, assuming your pain isn't easily set off, this is a really good one. And to make it harder, you can bring that heel as close as you can to the wall there, and you drive your body forward, hold it there for 30 seconds to a minute, and do this regularly because it will make you more flexible in the long run. The one disadvantage I will say with this is also the advantage. It's a more aggressive stretch. So if you have really, really burning plantar fasciitis or you just tore your Achilles tendon, I would much rather you start with something where you're sitting down instead. But ultimately, it's about doing what's in your comfort zone. So I hope you guys learned some great ways to stretch your calves. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the link below, and I shall see you next time.